Do you what happens if a guy gets selected? Maybe he's been on, I talked to Chili Palmer about this a little bit. A guy gets there, maybe he's a great operator, but he's got personality conflict issues. He crushed it in OTC, crushed it in selection, maybe he's done a deployment, but he's really like there's problems outside of the combat. How easy is it? The way it was put to me is that it's the hardest job to get and it's the easiest to lose. Like, what's something that if you mess this up, you're gone? Like, is there
Yeah.
stuff where there's a red line and if you cross it, no questions asked, see you later?
Yeah. I mean, we used to there. I think there was one term that we use. It comes is the three B's: booze, bucks, or broads. You know what I mean? And then drugs was the other one. You know, the there are like when you're talking about recreational drugs, cocaine and things like that, and marijuana, like that was a you're out, period, But we did go through a period of time where guys were taking performance enhancing drugs, and it was because we were banged up, and you either get pulled off the line and you miss a rotation to Iraq or Afghanistan, or you figure out a way to heal. So that was one of those things that became contentious, where a guy was taking performance enhancing drugs so he could stay in the fight. So again, you're a leader, right? And you sit this guy down and you're like, look, you just had a urine test and you've got steroids in your system. What's going on? Now, if he's doing it because he wants big pecs, you know what I mean? Like, screw that guy. He's out of the unit. He shouldn't have been there in the first place. But if he's doing it because he feels the responsibility to get back out there with his mates and he doesn't see any other way but to kind of skirt the margins, that guy usually he would do his penance. He would have to leave. We'd pull him off the line. He'd have to do his penance, and then he would come back. So there was a model when guys screwed up where you would go away for a year or you would go away for a couple years and you would fix whatever it was that you screwed up. You know what I mean? Most of the time it was relational stuff, or maybe a guy was, fell to alcohol or something like that, where we felt like that we were able to rehab them. Um, so I felt like there was a decent process of recovery and grace. I think we could have improved upon that. Because again, I think we're just now beginning to come to terms with the toll that it took on guys mentally. Chronic pain is one of those things that until you experience it, you don't really understand how much it just warps your mind. So guys turning to alcohol, turning to drugs, turning to, just risky behavior, those are all very, very normal reactions to a life of war. I think we could have done better in understanding that. Now, I would to go back to your question, that guy who just didn't fit in, that was probably a bigger uh, you're out. You know what I mean? But we also had a process where if he didn't fit in with your team or your troop or your squadron, we could move them around. They would get a fair shake. If we moved you from team to team to team, and each team is like, this guy's just a dick, or this guy doesn't get it. But I don't know of a single guy who was like one and done. If you were just kind of that strange personality but a good operator, there was usually a place for you.
Do the squad, because you're talking about moving guys around, do the squadrons, do they have kind of distinct personalities and culture, or is it so you're
Yeah,
shaking your head? Yeah. So what's kind of,
yeah.
can you give a breakdown of, like, in your opinion, what kind of separates them?
It's this is a weird one, dude. I mean, I would love to study this because the squadrons had their own personalities, the troops had their own personalities, and yet when you worked with them, it really didn't exist. Like one of the troop that I had before I got there, their nickname were the Rats on Acid because we hit everything hard. You know what I mean? It was the old number six. Boom, we hit it. Speed, surprise, violence of action. Those are the three tenets of close quarters battle. That's what we did. Speed, surprise, violence of action. Every single one. That was our go-to, and we were just very aggressive. Everyone was like super fit. Not that these troops weren't, but there were troops that are a little bit more sophisticated and intellectual, like tactical questioning. There were troops that would spend a lot of time talking to the detainee and trying to get information. And we were just like, tell us what we want to know. He's not telling us. We're moving on to the next one. So, when you, this is an interesting thing. When you come in as a leader, you're like, okay, this is interesting with officers because you're in and out. You do a couple years with each, with a unit, if it's a troop or a squadron or whatever. So you have to make that decision of who bends. Do I bend to their personality or do they bend to my personality? Or, can you suss out these things that are good or bad? Like are we too aggressive? So that was one of the things when I came in on that particular troop. It was like, okay, this troop is, man, their success rate is 99.9%. So whatever they're doing works. It seems awfully aggressive. It seems awfully violent, a little bit more than some of these other troops, but it's working. So when I come in as the leader of that organization, I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to watch it. You know what I mean? And I'm going to have these open discussions with the team leaders and the other leaders and just say, hey man, this is the perception from the outside, or these are the things that I'm looking at. We need to be adult enough to recognize our own warts, our own sacred cows, and that type of thing. So that's $1 million question. There are distinct personalities in teams, in troops, in squadrons, and yet it's very, very difficult to pull it out and recognize it.
I have two questions left for you on the Delta front. One, and I'm going to ask this one first. I think this is a good one. When you look back at your career, is there any mission you can talk about that you say that I'm most proud of that? Like one that you're actually able to discuss when you look back, you're like, man, I'm so proud. Maybe even if I wasn't like the boss of it, I was indirectly involved. And I'm just from a historical standpoint or an effort, I'm just so glad that I got to be a part of that.
Wow. Yeah, I think probably the one that I'm most proud of is this one I keep talking about that had a presidential involvement, cross-border operation, and I can't talk about that one. And it wasn't just, like I said, the precision of it all and the mission accomplishment. It was really understanding, hey, this op had been on the go list for years, and we never got final approval. So really understanding the strategy and all of that. So that one stands apart. And then they just all kind of blend together. Oh, okay. There was one. Okay, yeah, there was one in Afghanistan where one of the biggest difficulties in Afghanistan was getting your opponent to fight. So anytime you had foreign fighters in Afghanistan or foreign fighters in Iraq, like you knew it, they stood and fight. They were there to bang, But the Iraqis that lived there, the Afghans that lived there, man, they didn't want to die. You know what I mean? Like they didn't want to go up against us. So you constantly had to set these conditions where they thought they had the upper hand, And so one of the times when I was in Afghanistan, I'm studying when the Afghans would attack. Like what was precipitating them to attack? And that was the thing. It was like, oh, vulnerabilities. And one of the things that I looked at was these Marines were infilled and they had two sniper positions that weren't supportable. They should have been. They thought they were, but they weren't. And the Afghans recognized that weakness, and they basically masked and enveloped these Marines and wiped them out. And I remember looking at that and being disappointed, A, the tactical mistake that the Marines made, B, the rules of engagement. So the Marines also didn't engage with these Afghans because the Afghans weren't showing the aggressiveness. They had weapons on them, but they were like circling them, you know what I mean, and surrounding them. And by the time the Marines felt like they had reached the rules of engagement, it was already too late. And I think it was 8 Marines that got killed. And as Delta Force, one of the things in Afghanistan towards the end, we knew we weren't going to win that war. Like that, we weren't there to win the war in Afghanistan. We recognized that we had lost the national will. My job was to protect the soldiers and airmen and sailors that were on the ground, you know what I mean, in harm's way. And my other job was vengeance. You fuck with us, we're going to fuck with you. And when those Afghans killed those Marines, I took that personally. You know, who do you think you are? You have the balls to do that? And this was in a faraway region in the northwest part of Afghanistan that we weren't even working. But I made it a point to say, we're gonna avenge those Marines. And I see what you did there, and we're gonna try to sucker you in to do it again. So we did just that. We hit a village, we got the people that we were going after, and then we did a false exfil. So we got on the CH-47 and we jumped off. So the enemy, the Afghans that were observing us, they saw us get on the helicopters, but they didn't see us get off. We jumped out of the doors with the miniguns on it, and then we scattered through the village and we hid, and we left a couple of operators on these rooftops, 2 sniper positions that could be observed. They weren't like walking around, but it was like, hey, we know the Afghans, and we're monitoring what the Afghans are. They're talking on, push to talk radios, Radio Shack, little handies. And they see our guys and they're communicating and saying, oh, hey, they left. And it looks like they left, 2-man teams behind. Let's go get them. And they replicated that same strategy that they did with the Marines a few weeks earlier. And they massed on us with motorcycles and vehicles, like by the hundreds. And we popped up out of the village, and it was a turkey shoot. And I'm proud of that, because we recognized how they were fighting, and we beat them at their own game. I'm proud of that, because the restraint, our guys waited until like the enemy was right on top of us. And we avenged those young Marines. So yeah, that one sticks out in my head as a huge success.